What's going on YouTube? This is Squids, and this week is like pretty much wrapping up all the seasonals, kind of like what I talked about in the last video that I did. And for some reason over the last 3-4 years, I believe, I've been hearing so many great things about the Vinland Saga. So Monday, I decided to binge both seasons of it, catch that last episode, and pretty much just indulge in what is the Vinland Saga. And I can understand exactly why this series got a straight in the top 100 on Mal. I gave both seasons a 9. Honestly, I would give the second season a 9.5, but I digress. It is a wonderful thing. It almost reminds me a lot. I've seen a lot of people say Code Geass, but it also slightly kind of sort of reminds me of like a Norwegian Berserk, almost, in a sense. Not exactly to the same level. However, it gives me that kind of vibe. And this video pretty much is just me saying, because I've seen a lot of people commenting on it and talking about it, but I feel like the second season for the Farmland Saga, as they call it, is better than the first season in some ways. Now, I know a lot of people that kind of watch these like action fantasy historical like seinen type stuff normally like a lot of violence, and season 1 completely has you covered. Don't get me wrong, season 1 is still a work of art. You get the story and not on you, so got backtrack on that one, but there's so many characters just like that you get to meet and develop into. Obviously, with any story, that's gonna be a thing, but this one starts off with Thorfinn, who is this little blonde boy with Norse heritage, living in Iceland. And like any boy in that age and time, was just kind of bored and sick of, living on this ice cube, and wanted to go fight like any other Norse boy. Now, his dad, that we do meet right off the bat, Thor's, is an Viking, and lived the whole life, one of the most brutal, gruesome warriors there was. Gave it all up, decided to raise a family and run away, to different countries. He didn't have to deal with the king. And everything's going fine, Thor's is trying to teach little Thorfinn, a little life, and not, that you don't need a sword for everything, and nobody has enemies naturally. And we get interrupted immediately afterwards by not an ex-Viking, but a Viking that used to work with Thor's, and he pretty much tells him that he needs to go on this quest because he's been dead for hasn't been dead for 15 years in hiding. And so he goes on this quest, and essentially we meet this other guy that was with the Viking that told Thor's he has to go on this, named Escalad, and he is like, I'd say the villain, not necessarily, more of a antagonist, but he's the main, threat, I guess, of the series. And they go on the adventure, and I could, go way more into spoiler territory, but it just sails through. And we obviously get to meet Thorfinn's mother and his sister, and kind of what life is like on this island, while everybody, with pretty much, a few minor characters, another main character that's very important later on, Leif Erikson, they all go on this journey, and things don't go as planned, and things happen, and Thorfinn becomes a literal machine to get revenge on what happens to his father, Thor's. And you get this adventure and growth of a character throughout the first 24 episodes, right? We get to follow Thorfinn, who wants to get revenge and thinks nothing of it, just anger throughout his whole body to get Escalad. But while this whole thing's going on, he doesn't realize almost that he's getting more of a father figure role from Escalad, while trying to revenge Thor's. It's a whole thing. The character development's great. The action scenes are supreme. Like, some of those kills are top of the line. And other than that, I mean, Wit Studios does fantastic. And the conclusion of this first season is great. I don't have any gripes with it. I mean, Canute is not exactly my favorite character in this season. But, you know, it drives the point, it gets the message, and you get great action scenes. I totally understand. However, we get into season 2 with Farmland, and Farmland is like out of this world, okay? Like, you get a nice time skip, you know, things that moved on in life, and Thorfinn's grown up. He's an 18-year-old man, and he's given up the sword, he's given up fighting, trying to figure out his way in life. And after the conclusion of the first season, you know, he's sold off as a slave, and he meets this other character that we get introduced to right off the bat, named Einar, who is going to be his hand-in-hand man, from what I understand from these fans, because obviously from what I hear, this is going to be continued from Studio Mappa, which was different than season 1 because that was Studio Wit. But I hear it's going to get a continuation eventually on the lines of Mappa, you know, with their Chainsaw Man and 10,000 other animes they've got on their list. But it did a great job. And after that, you know, we like I said, we get Einar's side, and they conclude the way they work it into finding Thorfinn again is very well executed. And we get to see a character whose, you know, whole family's gotten murdered and butchered by the pirates meet a man who used to be one of those men and regrets everything, but also has like this conflict of, you know, like, how do I make up for it? What do I do to redeem myself and change the way the world is? And we get these events, you know, throughout the season where we get to see Canute, the new king, just completely 180 as a character. And he reminds me a lot of Griffith, which is, you know, the references I'm giving here. And, you know, he does the 180. Thorfinn does a 180. He ends up being more like Thor's in the end of this season than anybody. And we meet a lot of really cool side characters on top of it, like Snake and his bandit of people that are guards on the property, and, you know, Arnheid, who has a really big arc towards the end of the season. It's just a lot of like character growth, development, interactions, and everything along those lines. It really intrigued me the whole time, you know, wondering what was going to happen next, and just how, as a character, Thorfinn is growing throughout this whole saga. And towards the end of it, Thorfinn finally makes it home to his sister and mother and the whole village. And, you know, it's been 15 years or whatever, 14 years, I don't know the exact number, but it's been a long time. And everything just starts to process into this next initiative of continuing in his father's footsteps of what he was going to do before, you know, the whole fake voyage goes out and everything went down the shitter and life just went on its way and went how it was supposed to. It's a really touching, moving arc. And there's not, I mean, there is violence, don't get me wrong. This series and this season does have violence in it. And I mean, it's definitely not as prevalent to the arc or the story plot as the first season, for sure. And I think that's what interests me the most. Is I love me some good action scenes, but just getting a character and getting to know them and their weaknesses and their growths and everything that's just involved with that is just, it really gives you perspective and makes you appreciate a series more than you normally would, in my opinion. Like just a normal 12 episode shorty. I love things that are longer and get you enveloped in these characters and you get to know them. And so far, Vinland Saga has not disappointed in that category. So, all in all, I know this wasn't really a huge, you know, breakdown of everything, but I honestly think the Farmland Saga doesn't deserve as much hate as it got. I think they did fantastic on it, and I think it's superior to the first season. But without the first season, you wouldn't have that build-up. You wouldn't have that backstory, and it would be a completely different show, and things just wouldn't be, you know, what they are, and it wouldn't have flown the way it did and has. So, with that being said, that's been today's video, and this has been Squids. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, and I'd consider it the most amazing thing if you wanted to leave a subscription. It means a lot to me. But other than that, that's about all I got for today, so we'll see y'all later. Peace.